about their first job. My name is Amanda Lawrence. I'll be the moderator. I'm a faculty member in the School of Information Science and the Director of Internships for Communication. So it's good to see you all and excited to hear about your experiences. So just to let everyone know, we will be recording the session. So that's just a heads up for everybody. Students that are here will share a survey at the end to let you to track attendance in the session, just to make sure if an instructor has asked you to be here that we have that information, and also to get some feedback from you after the sessions are over. So like I said, I apologize for my voice, but I will do my best, and I'm excited to talk to you either way. So just to get us started, I just have about 4 questions. So we're really hoping for some interaction with everybody, but I want to get us started and get an idea of who the panelists are today. So the first question is just, will you introduce yourself and tell us about your current role? Does anybody want to volunteer to go first?
I can kick us off.
Thank you.
All righty. Well, hey, everybody. I am Katelyn Dougherty. I graduated in May of 2021, which seems like it's been a lifetime. So much has happened since graduation, but I'm not too far removed from campus. I currently am an associate regional sales leader for the Hershey company. So my job is managing a sales team. I have 8 reps that work for me, calling on convenience stores from Missouri all the way through the state of Arkansas, and then down into little parts of Texas as well. So lots of experience in sales. My first role out of school was with that sales position within the company, and now I'm managing a team.
Awesome. Thank you. Anybody want to volunteer to go next?
I can go next. So my name's Michaela. I'm a COVID May 2020 grad, so that was fun. But I'm based in Atlanta. That's where I was born and raised. So I'm back here. But I work for a media planning agency called Foundry. If any of you are account management path people and you've taken media planning or will take media planning, that is my job. So just a lot of basically like deciding, where and when advertisements are going to show, the strategy behind it, why we do certain ads in certain places over others, some budget management, all that fun stuff. So that's what I do. I've been doing this as my career like since I graduated, plan to stay, all that good stuff. So it's a good time.
I saw Camron unmuted. You want to go next?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Now I'm going to stay off on mute. I don't know why. All the mute buttons just kind of make me feel
That's
weird.
okay. That's fine.
2020, May 2020 grad, COVID grad as well. Let's go. When I graduated, I initially worked with the Los Angeles Clippers in sales, but I transitioned. I am co-owner in oral care company. We just launched in 49 Walmarts, and I also am a agent for Grady Sports Agency, where I help on the NIL side, and in the process of going back to law school so I can become officially an NFL agent as well. So, yeah.
Hey, all, my name is Ryan Cullinane. Recently graduated in May 2022. I'm originally from Clearwater, Florida, and I now work at the University of Georgia in their athletic association for sports communication. I work daily as like a media liaison for the athletic department and media. I primarily work with men's tennis, men's, women's basketball, volleyball, and football. So I've worked a lot with a lot of their sports teams across the board here, and it's really great to be back to talking to some people who love repping Big Blue, because it's a lot of red here.
My name is Kayla Ruth. I graduated in December of 2021. When I first graduated, I actually was an au pair for about 6 weeks. Jumped around a little bit trying to find like a more professional role, and I recently got a job at the Eye Care Institute. I'm the executive assistant to our CEO / graphic designer. So I do a lot of the ordering, a lot of administrative work, about 50% of the time, but then 50% of the time I'm doing web design, coordinating events for the practice, all of that jazz, helping with different ads and whatnot that we put out just within the practice, and general IT stuff. I kind of do a little bit of everything, but I'm in Louisville now, so I feel you on the seeing a little bit too much red all of the time. So
I love it. We still have our big blue pride, right? So the next question, I just want you to think a little bit about when you were in college. So this could be, maybe we have students at various stages in their degree, I'm assuming. So if you could, this could be at any point in college, maybe when you started, or maybe when you were close to finishing college. But if you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice to yourself as a college student, what would that be?
I'd love to start this one if you don't mind. I think one of the things I actively think about almost every day in my current occupation is I wish I started going after this more, and I knew exactly what I had to do to get in touch with the people at Kentucky to end up in the spot that I did. But I was too nervous and I was too anxious to make that first email and try to make a connection. It all worked out just fine for me, but it definitely would have helped a lot more if I wasn't so afraid to make a step that I eventually made anyways, because it ended up helping my career a lot. And I do think that I would have be able to make some larger steps while I was in undergrad instead of having to shove it all in about a year.
I was going to say the exact same thing, except to build off of it more. Ask questions. Like when I was in college, maybe it was partially I was a transfer, and then my second semester COVID happened, so I didn't get as much of a feel of like the UK campus, but I was very weary to like ask professors for questions or even other students. And like Ryan was saying, just didn't feel like I connected enough on campus. And I hope now I haven't been back to Lexington a long time, so I hope things are back to normal enough to where you all are connecting in person, because it is so important. Like, make those connections, talk to people, ask questions. Basically, just don't be nervous. Don't be afraid. Whatever that entails for you, just forget it, because it'll help you so much more when you get into the job field if you're comfortable with talking to people and asking questions, because your employers will appreciate it so much more if you just ask the questions and talk to them about things rather than let things sit, live in confusion, or just feel like a burden. It's much more of a burden to, like he said, be backtracking and trying to squeeze things in than if you just like be comfortable and ask questions.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would say, like, kind of similar to that is like, don't be afraid to hear the word no, or to like not get a response from people. I did a lot of like random networking, reaching out to like alumni of UK is always such a great easy in. And, a lot of times I think people are really passionate. At least I know I am really passionate about like helping people who are graduating. And so you might be surprised if you are just kind of like, reaching out to people on LinkedIn, or people who, you saw at a panel or whatever it may be. Like, you might be surprised the response that you get. But on the flip side of that, I've heard a lot of people who have gone through that process and have said things like, oh, well, I reached out once, I didn't get a response. Like, they probably just don't want to talk to me. But like, you kind of have to be a little bit annoying about it sometimes. Like, people are busy. I promise, like, they want to help. If they're not interested in helping you, like, they'll tell you in some way or another. But, I've had plenty of times that I've had to kind of build connections and be very persistent about, emailing, setting up a time to call, knowing what questions to ask, stuff like that. On a different note, in terms of like being in college, I would say, like, cherish the times where you have your friends in a very, very close radius of you. It gets a little bit more difficult to do that when you're not living in the same place. I know that's something for me, like with my college experience getting cut a little bit short with COVID, like, really, set yourself up well for like after you graduate with building those connections, but like, make sure that you're capitalizing on your time at UK as well.
I want to piggyback off of what everyone said. You know, they're spot on. I can say, like, even getting to UK, and Skylar can attest to this, a lot of it was like me reaching out and putting myself out there and letting you see who I am as a person. Because, you know, when you graduate, that only tells half the story. So something that's continued to work, you know, for me, even outside of college, is the networking portion and being able to, you know, sit down with someone and show them what I can accomplish, you know, what I want to accomplish. So 100%, I would say, you know, just continue to put yourself out there. Like, don't be too cool to network or too cool to, you know, go to an event that's going to, you know, benefit your career or benefit you in, you know, any way. And I think that's something that carries on, you know, even after you graduate. You know, the more you put yourself out there, the more you know, you'll accomplish in whatever, you know, your goals are. So yeah, I think everyone's spot on.
Mine kind of piggybacks off the networking. Something I wish I would have told myself when I was 17, 18, 19 is build your brand, right? Especially in this college, right? We talk a lot about branding and what that looks like for companies. The harsh truth is that you have a brand also as a person. So start building that brand with the faculty, with your professors, with your friends, with alumni, whoever you can. But make sure it's a brand that you want to, or make sure like the brand that you want to share about yourself is your story, right? You know, get involved, have internships, get out. You know, that's the best part about the college, in my opinion, is that we had to have that internship. I don't know if it's still that way, but we had to have that internship as a class credit, and that kind of helped me figure out, you know, where I was passionate about, what I was good at, and what I wasn't so good at. But overall, like, building your brand is going to be really important, not only in college, but also as you look to start a career. And it's a big piece of networking. You have to have your elevator pitch. You have to have what you care about as a person. So work on that now. Let this be a place where you can safely make those mistakes in your internships, make your mistakes in the classroom, to make sure that when you are ready to get out and get a career and start your job, that you kind of have a little bit more of a solid footing on what you're looking for and who you are as a person and what you can bring to whatever company you're applying for.
Awesome. Thank you all. And one thing that I personally enjoy talking to students about is how I think everyone has wonderful skills and experience and education. How we articulate that to an employer really matters. So could you share with us, you could talk about either or both, but I had in mind more specifically how you would articulate how your education prepared you for your current role.
I think for me, I took a sales job out of college. So it's really common for us to go, you know, the branding or the ad agency route. But I took a sales role. And so for me, where I had to be creative is figure out, when have I inadvertently sold, right? What have I done in my college experience that has allowed me to have that base skill set? And so in my time at Kentucky, I worked really closely with the people that were in the PR department, and I actually was like an ambassador for the university. So I was all over the Instagram, doing Instagram takeovers, doing all these networking events, trying to be involved in it as I could. And so that was really kind of what I latched onto when I went into these sales interviews was, hey, I sold Kentucky, right? Like I was out there all the time trying to get people excited to come to Kentucky. And a lot of this happened during the pandemic when we were virtual. But when I think about kind of my in-classroom experiences, the things that I really kind of latched onto were the experiences that I had for my internships, but also more so the variety of classes that I took. So we were able to take classes. Obviously, I was the PR path. So a lot of my classes were PR based, but I try to take at least one class in every single pathway. Again, I'm not sure if the major is still structured that way for ISC, but that was a really big thing for me because I was able to go into an interview and say, hey, I have experience in X, Y, and Z from my classes, but I also can sell in this way through working with UK.
Yeah, I would say one thing that I found really helpful was really focusing on those soft skills that you build in college, you know, going through classes, going through internships and stuff. You know, when I had entered my job in media planning, the fact that I had a tiny bit of experience from the class that I took actually was an advantage rather than expected, if that makes sense. A lot of times, especially like in this, you know, coming out of this college and stuff, you'll enter your first job and they'll teach you what they want you to know. They, most of the time, if anything, like a company will have its own processes and they'll kind of want you to learn, you know, how they do things, how they want you to work and stuff like that. So the way that you really do sell yourself, like going into interviews and stuff, is saying like, okay, in my classes, sometimes we all hate the group projects, but the group projects are great for learning how to work with people. You know, we do a lot of presentations. It really prepares you for, you know, speaking in front of others and getting comfortable. And in your internships, you're having to focus on time management, you know, prioritizing your different tasks. And one thing that I always found helpful was specifically going into interviews, having a couple of specific circumstances in which you encountered a problem. How did you solve it? In which you, I'm blanking, but like stories, you know, that are like quantifiable experiences that you can apply to most interview questions. That way, instead of just saying, well, I learned this, I learned that, you can really like hone in on specific experiences that you had that you think would make you people like to use the word like teachable, but like to make you a very teachable employee, because ultimately like that's what they're looking for, is someone they can take and kind of mold into an employee that's going to work well for them, but that already has the background of a lot of those soft skills.
Michaela, you took the words right out of my mouth. I would say it's because of, I guess my career path is a lot different. I would just say probably the teachable moments. Like I was a journalism student. I thought I was going to be Stephen A. Smith when I got to University of Kentucky, and you know, life happens and you find out that you're interested in other things. But the things that have carried over is, you know, I guess my ability to, you know, keep track of what needs to be done. Because, you know, with journalism, I don't know if anyone is journalism students, you have packages due every week. You have to go on the radio, and it's like, okay, it can be overwhelming. And entrepreneurship is the exact same way. Like no one is here holding your hand when, you know, I have a meeting with Walmart and they need all of their product in store. So I would say, yeah, the teachability, the ability to learn really quick, and the ability to adapt is kind of what I took mostly from the classes. And it's funny because, again, I was a journalism major and I was doing something completely different than journalism. So, but yeah, for sure.
I think they all hit the nail on the head. One of the things I would just add is that a lot of the skills and habits you're building right now really do translate into your work life. I don't think I really realized how true that statement was until I started working full time. Like whatever you're doing right now, you're going to probably continue doing as your habits once you graduate. Like you tell yourself, oh, I'm going to start doing this once I graduate. Oh, I'm going to stop doing this when I graduate. Be honest with yourself. We both know that's not true. So if you want to be that kind of a person, you have to start doing it now. You know, if you want to start waking up every morning and going on a run before you have to go to work, you should start doing that now so you can build that into your life. It's stuff like that that really add up to help you become the person that you want. And to get back to the core of the question of what did the education help you learn? And I really think that it was learning how to talk to these professors as if they were somebody who I have to respond to every single day, as if it's in a work situation. Like it's a lot of communicating between my professors and my direct bosses now that I feel like is very parallel to each other.
Just to kind of build off of, I think Michaela said the variety of coursework, maybe it was Katelyn, but the variety of coursework to me is what stands out the most about UK, or at least what's helped me in my job personally. Is I was creative path. So again, if it's not built the same way, I apologize. But when I was in creative, we were given like very specific industries, and it was always a different industry that we focused on. And I don't think people realize like how important each individual industry in our job, in our like career field, because we can work in any and every industry. Communications is applicable to every single aspect of human life. So the way that UK very much like nails into your head, like every place is different. And like you're like everyone else saying, like be teachable. You know, UK is very much like a mold. You learn to be moldable. I like to say you learn to, you know, adapt to your environment. But I would say a combination of that type of teaching and the variety of coursework has more than prepared me for my role. Like, I don't like to go off on a tangent, but recently we had to redesign our website for my work. and we had enlisted some people who were merchandisers for Amazon. So imagine Shein, but for an eye care practice. Just completely like missed the mark with industry because these people were not thinking in terms of like healthcare versus retail. And it can make or break a brand. Like it can completely change the way people look at you. And so it's a little bit of a tangent, but it plays into the variety. It's very, very, very helpful, and it's very, very applicable. Like just, it's probably was my favorite part, just the amount that they teach you and in so many different areas.
Thank you all. That was great. So can you tell us a little bit about what did you find most surprising about starting your career or being in the workplace as opposed to being in college?
When I was at the Clippers, my first job was killing it. And not just saying that, I was actually #1 in sales. I didn't get promoted. And I was like, wow, why are they not promoting me? This is really weird. Like, I'm doing a good job. But I was also extremely vocal about the fact that I wanted to become an entrepreneur. And I thought, honesty was, honesty is the best policy. In the workforce, I'm not saying be dishonest, but you have to, how do I say this? You have to, I don't know, you have to move with a little bit more, I guess, finesse. I think in college, you're supposed to, if you have a problem, you go to your teacher, you go to the school, you say, hey, this is kind of what's going on. You try to be straightforward. But what I found really quickly is that it's not the same in the workforce. And again, I'm not saying, you go, you lie, but you just have to understand the people that you're working with. You're not in college anymore. No one's looking to hold your hand. No one's looking to help guide you. When you get to this job, they expect you to understand the job. And I learned that really quick. Yeah, they ended up telling me like, hey, like you were telling us that you wanted to be an entrepreneur. We didn't know how long you were going to be here while we promote you. And I was like, well, okay, I guess that's fair. So, yeah, that's something that stuck with me. It still bothers me. You probably can tell, but yeah, that's something that I realized really quick.
I would say my dad had always told me this, like kind of getting towards the end of college and as I had internships and stuff, but I don't think I truly understood it until I was in like my first full-time job, is that one of the most important work relationships you have is with your boss. You might be thinking about your coworkers and the people you're working with on an everyday basis. And of course, it's important to have like a really good team dynamic, but having a good working relationship with your supervisor is so, so important because, their managing style like can be so different depending on who you're working with. And that I've had bosses where their managing style and my learning style did not necessarily, go together well. And so I kind of had to like finesse that situation a little bit and figure out like, how can we both get the best out of this? And, they're the ones that are doing your year reviews. They're the ones that are going to be giving you feedback. They're the ones that are going to be, teaching you what you need to know. And so, I definitely agree with the with your kind of lateral coworkers and anyone in general, like making sure that depending on who it is and your kind of relationship with them, you're treading the line between professionalism and friendship. But definitely was not expecting like how important having a boss that you honestly really vibe with and a team that you really vibe with, like how important that is, because it's your everyday. It's who you're talking to every day. And if there's disconnects there, it can make things a little bit trickier to navigate. So I would say like turning it into advice while you're going through the interview process, make sure you're really like trying to vet out management styles, like what's the team dynamic and, understanding what you're looking for and trying to go after that.
I feel like I could talk about this for hours because while the program does a great job, nothing prepares you for the real world like the real world. But I would say if I had one thing that really surprised me, it is the opportunity that's out there if you're willing to do the work. You would not believe the people who are willing to fight for you and fight with you for you to succeed if you're willing to put in that work. I kind of, I had a father in sales my whole life. My uncle was in sales. I grew up around sales. My whole life, everyone was like, you're going to go and you're going to be in sales. And I was like, no, I'm not. I don't want to do it. Like, that's not what I want to do. And as it came time for me to start doing interviews and, different career fairs, job after job after job, sales, 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 sales. So eventually I swallowed my pride. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go into sales and kind of see what happens. And it was the best decision I've ever made in my entire life, starting working for Hershey right out of college, because I was very vocal about what I cared about and where my career aspirations and goals were. And people fought for me to be successful because I worked hard. This isn't supposed to be like a, well, I'm so great kind of like bragging moment, but it's true. I was very blessed. I had a really awesome manager. So much like Michaela was saying, I had a great boss. We worked really well together. That was important to me coming out of school, but I worked really hard and made sure that it was, going back to the brand, it was visible. And I'm all over LinkedIn. I loved it. I was very involved in a lot of different things with Hershey when I first started, but people will fight for you to be successful if you put in that work. But kind of like what Ryan was saying, you have to be building those habits now. You have to be getting that experience while you're in your undergrad to prepare you for that experience when you're in the workforce. So yeah, overall, lots of things I wish I would have known. But the biggest thing is that people will advocate for you, but you have to put in the work and you have to kind of figure out what you care about to be successful. No one's going to hold your hand.
I think one of the things that surprised me. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. You go first.
I was just going to say, I think, and I know Katelyn could definitely talk to this. I think one of the things that surprised me the most was how difficult I forgot it was to really relocate and go somewhere completely new. I'm from, when I came to University of Kentucky, I've lived in Clearwater, Florida my entire life, and that's a 13-hour drive one way. So it was a big step for me. And the rush of being a freshman, I know you guys have all experienced this. It's like you're surrounded by new people and you have so much going on. There's not really much time for reflection and you're doing so much. But when I came to my first job in Athens, I kind of forgot how hard it was to start a new life. And I think this might not be super work specific, but restarting what you're familiar with, going from your hometown to your college to your first job, is a lot more difficult than it sounds. I think I really struggled for a while finding that new balance for myself when I was in a new space. It took a lot of growth, and I think challenging yourself to figure that out is something that's been super beneficial for me. I feel like I've never been in a better spot in my life because of it, honestly. And I think if you're able to challenge yourself to do stuff like that and get out of your comfort zone, the benefits you reap from it are just way more than you could ever imagine. And I think that being able to move past the fear of starting a new life again, it really starts there.
This is why I'm glad you went first, because it builds off of what I have to say. Yes, as someone who's moved countries, moved cities, moved states, all the jazz, moving and being adaptable to your environment is extremely important. But on the flip side of that, don't be afraid to fail. Like, I'm being 1,000% honest. My first job, I tried the sales route. I'm sure the people at Hershey's are much nicer than the people that I worked with, because Lord, the sales team I worked with were crazy. They scared me. It was a crazy, scary place to work. I did 0 out of 10. Anyways, but I learned from that experience that what I do and don't like, and kind of what Michaela said, like, I learned that me and this boss, like, we were not, the management styles don't vibe. He very much made me, like, to be honest, extremely uncomfortable and like nervous. And you should have a like great relationship with your boss. And I feel like if I tried to like force it out of this job, tell myself like, you'll like it, you'll whatever, but if it's not benefiting you ultimately, because if it's not something that you want to do down the line, like, don't waste your time. And don't beat yourself up if it's not the right thing. Like, I had left Italy, moved back to my hometown, and was living with my parents. I got this job. I thought I'd made my big break, and I moved to Cincinnati. And then I wasn't even making enough at this job to like hardly make rent, and just had to figure it out. And then moved to Louisville because I was like, I'm not figuring it out up here. Like, let me see if I can figure it out somewhere else. And luckily, every place I've ever moved, like I do have somewhat of a support system. So I'm not just out here like flailing for, you know, a life preserver, but don't be afraid to fail. I spent probably from the time that I didn't lose that job, but I quit that job to the time that I got this job, beating myself up about not having a job post grad, feeling like a failure, like feeling like I'm not doing enough with my education. Like, what can I do? Don't be afraid of that. And kind of to build off what Katelyn said earlier, build your personal brand, because that's only going to help, the fear of failure, like cushion that blow a little bit more, because you'll know at the end of the day, like, you do know your stuff, you have all your stuff together. It's just not the right fit for you, and it's not a failure. It's just a step in a different direction. So that's just what I wish somebody told me, because I spent a lot of time beating myself up, and there's absolutely no reason to. Like, she ended up in sales. That's not something that we went to school for. I didn't go to school to be an assistant, but you adapt to these things and you fit to where you want to fit, and you just don't be afraid to try something new and then fail, because that's just how you learn something else.
Can I add one more thing onto the back of that? Something my dad like instilled in me from the time I was like tiny tot. Failing and failure are very different things, right? And it's something that like I wish somebody would have like screamed this in my face when I was in college trying to grasp my head around this concept, because you talk a lot about it, Kayla. And in the way I look at it, right? Like if you're not failing, you're never going to grow and you're never going to learn. So I love failure. So I'm glad that you said that. Because failure is okay. Failure is human. Failing is when you refuse to get up and try again or change the path. So just kind of on that same thing, like be okay with failure, be okay with making those mistakes. But when you fully fail, be willing to then try again, because when you don't, that's when failure becomes a problem, or when it becomes like hurtful to yourself.
This is also great. I say we just end now. I'm just kidding. It's really, really good though. I love this. So I have other questions that I could ask, but I want to give everybody a little bit of time. We have about 20 minutes left. Do we have any participants in here who would like to ask questions? You're welcome to unmute and ask those yourself, or you're welcome to type those in the chat and we'll ask them for you. Either way is great, but I want to open the floor up and then I'll bring us back together in a few minutes. Any takers?
Was there one that was in the chat? Oh, that was Brandy saying, send it. I'm not embarrassed to ask Brandy, are uncomfortable, but yes, please, if you guys just drop it in the chat if you want to ask. But I was just going to say, as the dean of the college, I'm really proud to call you all our alum. I'm sorry I had to jump on a little bit late, and I am here in my house with my dog's bark. I apologize, but what would you say, I don't know if this was discussed before I came on, but what did you learn in the workplace from working through the pandemic and, coming out on the other side? How has your workplace changed? And what advice might you have for people who are entering basically a changed workplace from when a lot of us, used to work in the industry, because a lot of the industries have changed drastically because of the pandemic?
I have one for this as a COVID grad, as we all know. So when I started my first job, and still kind of now, my first job was fully remote. And then now I'm kind of in like a hybrid, very flexible, like hybrid work from home, work from the office situation. I would say really understand your boundaries. Working from home, it can be very easy to, oh, my email's here, I'll just work through my lunch break, or, oh, I'm already at home, might as well stay, like I have this one thing I have to finish, might as well stay on for another 30, 45 minutes, get it done. And I do agree with that, obviously, if you don't want to do it the next day, but like, understand, I think it's a little bit harder working from home to put those boundaries in place. And I know I have a problem of like someone sends me a chat and I feel like I have to answer it very, very urgently. And this is something that like my team is working on as a whole is understanding, like, just because you're not, if you're in the office with someone, you can kind of see what they're working on, go up to them really quick, ask a quick question. But I think the pandemic has been helpful in terms of the fact that companies hopefully are a lot more respectful about like personal boundaries and flexibility, especially when it comes to like working from home. But knowing that like you kind of have to put up boundaries for yourself. Same thing with taking your vacation days. I am an advocate, take your vacation days. I got into a rut in my first job thinking, well, I don't need to take time off, but because I'm already here, I'm not, still learning. And then 3 months later, I'm burned out and didn't even realize it, And so like, you kind of have to advocate for yourself, your own mental health, your own boundaries. And I think the pandemic has really like made that a lot more apparent for people and employees.
Thank you so much.
So anybody else want to add on to that one? We have a few questions in the chat I can share too. So the next question in the chat is, when did you all first start looking for jobs out of college, and what were the steps that you took?
I can, go ahead, Camron.
No, you got it.
I started looking for jobs in fall of 21. So I graduated in the spring, in May. I signed with my job contract with Hershey in January. So I had interviewed with them in the fall, and then had accepted an offer pretty early on in January. You start now. It's never too early to start getting ready for that post-grad life. Nothing that you're doing, I'm not like, you don't know what you want to do when you come out of college. The career fairs, there's so many opportunities, but get some experience in a lot of different fields, and start building your resume. Take advantage of every single resource that the college offers to prepare you. Go to the career center, meet with your advisor, talk to the faculty. There are so many people on campus who can help prepare you, but it is never too early. Me personally, I did my internship that I was doing for the college when it was actually during the pandemic. So it was my junior year summer going into my senior year. So I had that internship on my resume. And then I had also decided to do a different route too, an intern with a PR firm for a little bit of time. So I kind of got some experience in that. And then I also did in the fall of my junior year, I had done an internship with a event planning agency. So I was really able to kind of tip my toes to do a bunch of different things. Biggest piece of advice when it comes to that is get experience and say yes to every single opportunity that comes your way. You never know when the opportunity is going to turn into something more. So it's never too early to start prepping for, that post-grad jump. But definitely biggest pieces of advice, use the resources that the college has, try to get a variety of experience. And last but not least, prioritize yourself in all of this. It's really easy to get caught up in, oh my God, I'm graduating, I need a job, or, oh my goodness, my friend is getting this job and moving to wherever she's going. Remember that you are your own person. You have your own goals in life. Figure out what those are and prioritize those things over everything else. You will be much happier in the long run if you prioritize yourself. That was a really long-winded answer, but again, I could talk about it for hours.
I want to hop in there as well. So first of all, Katelyn's spot on, right? So when you are graduating, please do not compare yourself to what everyone else is doing. First of all, your first job may not be your last. Really good chance it won't be your last job. And just take your time and understand kind of what you want, not what everybody else has going on, because then you get extremely distracted. Outside of that, though, what did I do, or when did I start looking for a job? So I would say maybe junior year, I reached out to maybe like 60 people on LinkedIn, 70 people on LinkedIn, and just was sending like, hey, this is who I am. I would love to connect with you. And I love to read. So I was just reading a book, and it talks a lot about how people love to talk about themselves. So, hey, just tell me how you got where you're at. Easy conversation starter. Not everyone, but a lot of people will tell you like, hey, this is the steps I took. And once they see that you're willing to learn, they'll invest into you as well. So my senior year, I actually spent a lot of time, and Jennifer, don't kill me, traveling to meet these different people who I reached out to, and my teacher's like, oh yeah, you're going to get a job, like you're fine. So just flying all these different places, meeting these people who I connect with on LinkedIn, but it ended up working out because still have a lot of those relationships today. And if I need a job, I guarantee I could probably reach out and they could point me in the right direction. So again, just echoing, put yourself out there and, reach out to as many people as possible.
What I was going to say is I went the completely opposite of these two go-getters. Proud of y'all. I was a server all through college because I had to work. But so I didn't focus as much on my professional networking as I feel like I could have. Now I would have been stretched pretty thin, but I still wish that I'd made more of an effort to network, because when I started looking for a job, it was after I'd gotten home from Italy. So it was like a couple months after I graduated. And I also made the mistake of I had not ever made a LinkedIn page. And I started looking on Glassdoor or Handshake before LinkedIn. That's a mistake. Like, don't do that, y'all. Like, I'm just telling, like, I'm giving you the guide of I did everything absolutely wrong. Don't do that. Like, start early. Now, I did have an internship, so I'm not completely like a slacker. I did work for Kentucky Eagle for about on and off for about a year and a half, 2 years of my undergrad. So I did have that, but I realized the power of LinkedIn, what it can do for you, how it can expose you to completely different people. Like, the connections that I've made on LinkedIn are very random sometimes, but I mean, you get a notification when someone in someone else's network is hiring. Like, that's how broad LinkedIn is. So I get job posts, even though I love my current job and I'm not looking for a new job. I still get job alerts from places all over the place, from connections I knew I had, but they were connections of a connection. And so if I could just give you the advice, don't do what I did. Don't wait until after you've moved back from another country and you don't have a LinkedIn and you start on Glassdoor. Those are all things you don't do. Start early, get that LinkedIn. One more thing. This kind of goes back. Your portfolios, start on that sooner, and don't make it a PDF. Make it a website, because it will help you out just 50 million times more for job hunting. I learned that the hard way also when I sat on my porch and made a website for 7 hours one day. So again, all of these things I'm telling, don't do what I'm doing. Do them the complete opposite way. Undo that, and put it in the correct bow. But that's the advice I would give on looking for jobs.
This one is a little bit specific to working in athletics, but generally a good rule to follow is if you are looking for a job in sports, look in the off season. College sports wise, they'll come about probably between May and June. I applied for an NFL internship last year that came out, I think, beginning of March. So a lot of those professional sports leagues for specifically football, I think will start up now, and baseball kind of runs around in December. So stuff like that. If you are looking for a job in sports, they do wait to post those pretty late. I got lucky with mine, and I kind of ended up with this job through a connection I made. So if the post that I didn't see would have probably come out around June, which obviously would have been after I walked. So if that is something that's of interest to you, don't get discouraged by a lack of opportunity in athletics just because you're looking in February or March. I would venture to say June or May, probably June or July actually is going to be your best time for looking for stuff.
Awesome. Thank you. So the other question we had in the chat was, what would you say is the big time management shift from college to the workplace?
I'd love to start up on this one as well. And this is probably, again, a little bit more specific to athletics. So I'm sorry, Nick, if I didn't answer your question directly. I think one of the things I really misinterpreted when I started working in athletics was, you hear a lot of, it means long hours, right? Like, it means you're going to work a lot. And I think hearing that is one thing, but putting that into practice is totally different. It means missing holidays. I couldn't go home for Thanksgiving. It means saying no to going to catch up with old friends. I don't remember the last time I've seen Katelyn in person. It means don't get to see your family as often. So I think to the biggest shift in management I've had to take was like trying to figure out how to maintain my own life balance while also regularly working 60 to 80 hours a week. Right. I can't control the days of the weeks that our athletic department has events. So like if there's a basketball game Tuesday night, I can't do anything about that. But what I can do is wake up a little earlier and carve some time out for myself in the morning to do whatever I want to do, because, I don't have to be at work till 8. So I can wake up at 5 and take 3 hours to myself in the morning, or something like that. So I think to kind of close this up, like the passion you have for your work really pushes you through some of the stuff that can be harder. If you really do love what you do, and I'm lucky enough to say that I know for a fact that I do, it really does help get through a lot of the harder days. So I think the biggest shift in management was really just learning how to take care of myself through a lot of the hard stuff. It's a lot of a grind, but I do love getting to work with such incredible people and get to walk into my office and walk past the national title banners on the wall at the indoor practice facility, which is pretty incredible. So, I'm pretty fortunate in that way. So I think just trying to take time for yourself would be my answer.
I was going to say, like, get used to not being at home. Maybe this is coming from a COVID, like I was a COVID grad technically, but just going to school during COVID, all my internships post and during college, all remote. The job I work at now is 100% in person because I'm an assistant to a person who has to be here every day. So I'm also here every day. And getting used to like not being in a comfortable spot. And maybe this is just specific to me, but for any like neurodivergent people or people that struggle with any mental illness, regardless, like being out of your comfort zone for 10 hours a day, some days, it's hard sometimes. And like if you're, at work and then you have to go to the store after, and then you have to go run all these errands, you lose yourself in that. Like you lose your me time, you lose that solace, that like level-headedness. Just like don't forget about yourself, because that's kind of building off of what Ryan said, but just coming from a role, because I know that like Michaela said she's hybrid. I'm sure some of you guys are hybrid or like aren't always in the office, but for those who are graduating in a much more post-COVID world than say I did and are having to switch from completely remote to completely in person, one, give yourself a little bit of grace. Like if you can't wake up super early at first, if you're like struggling, like don't beat yourself up about that. I'm still struggling to get up at 6:30 every day. I still sometimes don't get out of bed till 7. It'd be like that sometimes, but don't beat yourself up about it, because we are completely transitioning from during a pandemic workplace to a now present workplace. And it's weird for us to say, but a lot of us have not experienced like a professional in-person role at all. Like, we have at our regular, like not, I don't want to say regular jobs, but at our less professional roles, or not our post-college professions, you were in person, but for these professional roles, like none of this is completely new. So just be kind to yourself, don't forget about yourself, because you will be out of your house a lot and you won't be with your cats and at home as much with them, and they will miss you. Maybe that's just me again, but that's my advice.
The only thing I'll tack on to that is I now am in a very different role, in that in college, you're prioritizing your schoolwork, right? You have deadlines to meet. I'm fully leading a team of salespeople. So I have 8 people who directly report to me, and that's a challenging work-life balance when you do your job, and you create these connections, and you're not only their boss in work, but you're also sometimes I like to pretend and say that like, oh, I wear my Dr. Phil hat, where my reps will like tell me all their personal, what they're going through. And I think whenever you transition into any role where you're managing more than just yourself, you can really struggle with that work-life balance. For me, I travel for a living. I'm lucky if I'm home twice a week to my own apartment. I spend most of my life in hotels. And that's because I'm out in the field with my reps, and that's what I love. I'm passionate about it, right? I love people. And so I love my job, but that transition of time management looks really different for me. I don't get to go home most days to my apartment, or, you know, whatever that may be. I'm going back to a hotel and having to close the computer because it's really easy for me to sit and respond to the 15 emails I missed in the 8 hours I was out working in the field with my team. So definitely, like Kayla said, prioritize yourself. Make sure you're figuring out what recharges you. We just did an exercise not too long ago when I was up at Hershey, where we talked about this idea of like work hustle culture and how draining it can be on all of us. And I think the same is true when you're in college, right? All these internships, all this classwork, you can drain yourself really easy, but find the things that you care about and that you want to prioritize and do those things. Because that work-life balance, transitioning from being a solo contributor to your own grades to any role where you're managing more than one task, but specifically when you're people leading, it is a lot mentally to deal with. It's a really large load to bear, but it's super rewarding. But it's rewarding because I also find those things that I prioritize for my personal life to keep myself, you know, all sane in the head, or else I go crazy.
Awesome. So this has all been super wonderful advice. We have dropped a participation link in the chat. If the students that are here, if you don't mind to fill that out so that we can get some feedback on these panels and keep in touch with you on things related to this. This is just my personal way of ending panels lately. I stole or borrowed this from a podcast where we called it rapid fire questions at the end. So we have about 2 minutes left. So all I ask is that our panelists answer these very briefly. Are you ready? Awesome. So first is most random or least favorite interview question. Anybody have an answer for that one?
I would say asking what your weaknesses are. That's awkward to answer.
Any others?
When someone asks me like if I'm willing or unwilling to do something, because it doesn't really leave you a lot of room, because it's like, you know, so I don't like that.
Fair enough. What's your bucket list trip if you could go anywhere?
Japan.
See the Vatican.
Japan, the Vatican.
Oh my God, the Vatican is gorgeous. Greece, Mamma Mia. I want to be where whatever that place is. It's probably fake, but that's
Iceland or Switzerland.
Very cool. And the last one is your favorite place on campus.
I'm gonna get sappy. Rupp Arena. Me and Ryan have spent many hours camping in front of that place for basketball games. So it kind of makes me sad. I miss it.
I'd say the student center, because I worked there, and so I spent a lot of time there, and it holds a special place in my heart.
I can't wait to go back to Rupp Arena as a fan one day. Yeah, I mean, too many good hours, too many good memories, too many losses while I was there. But you know what? They're looking good, making the tournament this year, so I'll take that.
I'm feeling good about this one.
I really miss the specific Starbucks in the student center. I like that one better, and I miss it a lot.
I love these. Well, our time is up, but I want to thank you all again for coming. We really, 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 really appreciate you coming back and talking with us and giving students some advice and letting all of us hear how things are going for you. So we're really thankful to hear that from you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, you all have a good day.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thanks, y'all.